We've analyzed so far the kind of fifth level, the most basic category of physical needs and the counterfeit of addictive substitutes. We've talked about love based on giving, the ruach part of the soul, if you like, the love based on giving drive versus the free love drive. Even higher. Now, often if you ask people at this stage, what needs are there even higher than love? In the culture and society we live in, almost the message is that nothing's higher than love. But it's actually, I think, on a little more reflection, we realize that everybody has things that are even more powerful to them than love. I'll tell you a story that's got a personal touch for me, which is my grandfather in 1948. Actually, in World War II, he fought for the British Army. In 1948, he volunteered for the Haganah, for Israel's defense forces, as Israel was being invaded on the first day of its existence. And back then, the Israeli forces were quite limited in number. In the first few weeks of the war, they really struggled. There was, I think they had between about 8,000 rifles and 3,000 automatic weapons, or whatever the numbers were. Didn't really have proper artillery pieces, had a bunch of mortars, about 16 of these Davidka gun, and they had about 6 aircraft. They were very, very limited. And it was they were able to hold out in the northern fronts against the Syrian and Lebanese forces a little bit better, but against the more sophisticated armies, the Egyptians in the south, the Jordanians in the east, it was much more difficult. And often the method was literally dig big ditches and trenches, fight till either the last person or last bullet, and meanwhile behind them be digging the next round of trenches to slow down the Egyptian advance, until eventually they tried to send some of the aircraft, 2 of which just crashed and never even really made it, and then a bit of a counterattack. But it was very, very desperate. And you'd have scenarios where people were being recruited to replace troops at the front line. And you might get a mother who gets a knock on her door and someone says, do you have any able-bodied children who can go to the front line? And a mother might turn around, and say, well, one second, she's not even registered in the population here. All she has to say, or the father just say, no, they're not the Gestapo, they're not going to come looking in the bedrooms. And yet parent after parent would let their child go. What is that drive? See, the love drive says, don't be stupid, don't let my kid anywhere near this. Something else says, actually, let them go. What is that? And this drive, we might use in English words like morality or society or community or doing the right thing or meaningful choices. It's very powerful. It drives us to be willing to give our lives and willing to, if it ever came to it, God forbid, let a loved one give their life for as well. Now, I've had people say to me, no way, I wouldn't have my child give their life for anything. There's no country in the world I'd want them to die for, nothing. And that's plausible, but you can still come up with scenarios where it's very clear that such a drive exists. I'll give you an example. God forbid infinitely anyone should ever get this, but imagine a parent gets a call from a child who's been traveling somewhere in the world and they've been kidnapped by either a group of bandits or perhaps terrorists or something terrible. And the kid called their parent and, Mum, Dad, I don't know what to do. What's the scenario? What's happened? There's a guy with a gun to my head. They've got me. I'm sitting on top of a room. I can see beneath me a basement or something where there's lots of children locked into that basement, school children, wired to explosives. They want me to pull the trigger. I don't know why, maybe because they want it to be a British or whatever, and we have a nationality, American passport holder or something. They want me to pull the trigger and they will let me go free. And if I do not pull the trigger, they will shoot me dead. What should I do? Let's suppose we somehow knew that was true. You'd seen other people, the ones who pull the trigger go free, the others get shot. What am I supposed to do? Now, I think no parent could answer that question. What an agonizing question to get, God forbid, to ever have to deal with a question like that. But I think every parent would say how much prouder they would be of the child who would give their life, rather than blow up the children and walk out. Now, the love drive says, get out of there. I love you. I don't know these others. Please do what it takes. Come out. But another drive says no. So is that, and it's more powerful. Is it goodness? Is it morality? Is it humanity? In Hebrew, we talk about it as being the neshama, the almost like godly part of the person. But it's clear there's a drive in everybody to do what's good and what's right and care about their community, their nation, their world, whatever it may be, humanity, all of this. And it's even stronger than the drive for love. And of course, as a side point, this drive doesn't tell you what values are the correct ones. Depending on what you believe is right in the world, you can be motivated to go to the supreme sacrifice for anything. And what if society tells you it's the right morals, well, you'll be driven. It says some societies you might be driven to give lots of charity. In others, you may be driven to work for a terrorist organization. This drive doesn't tell us what is right and wrong, but it does create an urgency around us trying to work out what actually is true in the world, what actually is right or wrong in the world. Because if we don't, for all we know, we just get swept up in the tide of our society. The drive just says do whatever's good. It doesn't tell you what is good. And it produces the greatest good in the world. It's produced ideology, which produces so much good, got rid of slavery and fighting poverty and fighting all sorts of evil in the world. But it also, if a society's got a warped set of values, can do tremendous bad. That's an aside. But ultimately, it's this drive that makes us do charity, makes us volunteer. And by the way, if a person wanted deep fulfillment in this world, they shouldn't wait till the gun's at their head and work out, what am I going to die for? What would I be willing to die for? If we live for it, we have tremendous fulfillment. It's more powerful for us even than the need for love, which is more powerful even than the physical things. So we have this drive inside us. We can fulfill it. We can fulfill it by volunteering. We can fulfill it by doing charity. We can fulfill it by doing a lot of good things. I think in Britain, the percentage of GDP that goes to charity is about 1% last time I looked at the figures, which is remarkably low, although Britain, I think, is one of the most charitable countries in the world. I think America, which is the most, or certainly one of the most, is about 2%. I may be wrong on the figures. You can research them yourselves. But either way, you begin to see why so much of the world is miserable and not happy, not fulfilled. This drive is so powerful and so important, and we're just not doing it. In the Jewish tradition, Jewish teachings, the law, at least custom, is that a person should be giving at least 10% of their post-tax income to charity, unless it will make them poor. And similarly, we should be doing that sort of amount of volunteering with our free time. And that's great for the world, but it's also a deep part of the fulfillment of our inner needs of who we are, our godly self, or whatever else you want to call it. And if that's not being fulfilled, what is its counterfeit? So in Hebrew, one of the names for the neshama part of the soul is actually called kavod, which is that which is honorable. But the counterfeit is kavod, which is honor. Not pursuing the honorable, but trying to be honorable, trying to be honored, trying to be the center gravity point around which everyone gives you attention, respect, worship, etc. Now, this is the human counterfeit, because no amount of honor from others ever made us fulfilled. If you want to see a proof of this, just look at the people on planet Earth who have the greatest amount of honor and respect and millions of screaming fans. They are humanity's celebrities, and they are not the happiest people on planet Earth. And we read about what's happening in the celebrity world. It's actually very sad, about of marriages falling apart and midlife crises and the next midlife crisis. And it's not a criticism of any of those celebrities. You see, you or me can believe that what we're lacking is just a few more screaming fans, a bit more attention, and that will make us happy. But if you got there, and it's like you're already addicted to this world of honor and so on, and there's nothing on the other side. It's a very dark and lonely place to be. You're locked in the addiction, and either you start doing a lot of good in the world, which many do, charity and causes, or you start looking for new religions and cults and sects, or you might adopt a child somewhere. There's a lot of things you might do. But you've hit the end of that road. It might be drugs. You might delve into counterfeits or delve into good. But the addiction, the honor is not doing it. It doesn't do it. Honor is the counterfeit. Now, a bit of honor is not going to be a disaster. We've all been trained from childhood age to be the center of attention. But the point is that when it starts to substitute the real need, you see, the real need, if you've ever saved a life or done tremendous good, you can go back to that moment and nurture from it forever. A voice inside us almost says, you're good, it's worth you having been alive. And when that voice is not around inside us, that level of fulfillment's not there, we try and get everyone else to tell us how good we are. And that doesn't work. Charities, by the way, know this, that they always know that when you're trying to stimulate the good, a little bit of counterfeit, a building named after you or something is always, again, these are not bad things, but when the weight shifts towards honor instead of doing what's honorable, to being told you're good by everyone else instead of the inner voice of good, then it's a counterfeit, then it can become addictive. And we all know those people who can't stop talking about how great they are, who can't stop pursuing honor and how destructive it can be for those around them. So this is a very powerful lesson. If we stop and think, what is it I would give my life for? How can I live my life for it? Is it for Judaism? Is it for humanity? What are these things? What can I do to live for the things I would die for? How can I energize this deep part of me, this godly instinct or whatever else you want to call it, this need for good, for morality, for the nation, for humanity? How can I live this? How can I volunteer for? How can I contribute to it? No matter how much money or time I do or don't have, how much can I? That's what the fulfillment is. So we looked at the fifth level, the physical versus the addictive substitutes, the love based on giving versus the free feelings and free brain chemicals, the infatuation, the desire to do what's good and right, care about groups larger than me, versus the desire to be the center of attention, honor, and the counterfeit that brings. And that's our story so far. We're now going to go even higher than that, but that's a good place to pause.